Hello everybody and welcome back. So in the last video, we put together our Tanks Inc. fuel tank for the DR Nova. And we installed our sending units, got everything wired up to a nice little plug here. Got all our vent lines hooked up and everything. So in this video, we're gonna put the fuel tank in the car and run our new fuel lines. These are the parts we're going to be using. We have our hard line. We're using 3/8 aluminum hard line. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing. We're actually going to use these compression fittings to terminate our fuel lines, our hard lines. If you have a 37-degree flaring tool, you can do this a lot more cheaply by just getting the nuts and inserts to terminate these lines. The issue is, guys, I have like a really nice flaring kit, but it is 45 degrees, so it's not made to flare AN lines, so that's why I'm using the compression style fittings instead. By the time I bought the flaring tool and then bought the nuts to go on the end here, it would have been a wash. So plus these are a little bit easier to use, and I've used these before, so that's what I went with. And all this stuff is available through Summit. As usual, everything I use in this video, I will post links to in the description of this video. So if you guys want to do the same thing or a similar setup, everything will be there. What I'm planning to do is actually to run two lines out of here, and that'll be my feed and my return. Those lines are going to stay attached to the tank when I raise the tank up. Well, they're going to come out here somewhere, and they are going to run into this Corvette style fuel filter regulator. I believe the middle's the return, the outer one is the inlet, and you can usually tell because the larger line is going to be your inlet and the smaller line is going to be your return. Now, in my case, I'm using 3/8 for both, which is equivalent to a -6 line. As I said, I want to go ahead and make the lines before I put the tank up in there. I want to make the lines, at least this end, to come out, and they're going to wrap around, and somewhere in front of the tank, we're going to mount this filter regulator. Coming out of the filter regulator, we are simply going to follow the stock fuel line location, which runs along the frame down here in the bottom of the car. And then we're going to bring it up into the engine bay, and probably right here underneath our heater box, we're going to cut it off there, terminate it, and then from there to the engine, we're going to run a piece of braided -6 line. And the reason we're going to do that is because, the engine will move a little bit, and we want that braided rubber line to be able to kind of flex and move with the engine. So that'll make it less likely that something wears out, breaks, or starts leaking. Before we install our new fuel tank up there, I want to crawl under the car and kind of see how the fuel tank sits up in there, so we can go ahead and kind of figure out about how long I need to cut the lines that are going to stay attached to the fuel tank. It looks like the factory fuel line, I don't even know where this is going, but it looks like the factory fuel line actually stays wrapped pretty close to the tank. Comes off the top and it stays wrapped, and it goes behind the tank strap here. Oh, sorry, I let the camera fall, but it goes behind the tank strap here, goes around, goes through this bracket right here, and then kind of follows the frame, goes down in front of the wheel, and somewhere up there, yeah, right up there, it actually goes underneath the subframe connectors we put on. Or I say underneath, but it's actually going above the subframe connectors that we have put on there, and it goes out at that point, and then it follows the, looks like the outside of the subframe after that, and goes on up to the engine base. So here's what we're doing. The old fuel lines are actually tucked behind this little lip here. We're not going to be able to do that. The only way I could do that is if I mounted the filter regulator like somewhere over on the frame rail or something like that. I don't want to do that because that's going to require me to do some funky shit with these fuel lines here. Like I would have to make really long fuel lines coming out of here that stayed attached to the tank. So what I'm going to do, the fuel lines are going to be out here now, and then the tank strap is actually going to come right here, so it'll be right behind the fuel lines, hopefully, if everything works out. And I've kind of marked on the tank, like that's the bracket, and then the third mark there is where the mount's going to be. So it's going to be sitting something like that, and then I've just got to make the fuel lines to come off of there and go into and out of it. You know what the worst part about making YouTube videos is? Not being able to listen to the radio while you work on stuff. That's the worst part. Worrying about copyright infringement. Now this aluminum line is actually pretty easy to work with. I do have a line bender in there that we'll be using to make any like weird shapes or anything like that. But anyway, go ahead and get this process started. We're going to get one of our compression fittings out right there. And all we do, slide our collar on, slide our compression fitting on, slide this part on. It's kind of hard to get this in the camera frame, but we'll slide our compression fitting up. Make sure our line is seated all the way in there, and we crank this bad boy down. And that's it. We have our first fitting. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to screw that line onto this guy. Before we really start making a bunch of bends, I want to kind of figure out about how long that line's going to need to be, because there's no sense in dealing with all this mess. So what I'm going to do is take my tape measure, and we know this guy is going to be right here, about like so. So I'm going to take my tape measure, and I'm just going to kind of worm it around to where I think it needs to make that connection. And this would be a lot easier if I had somebody to hold this. Mr. Duct Tape will hold it for me. Thank you, Mr. Duct Tape. Basically, the line's going to come out. I'm probably going to bend it around like so. Bring it down. And then bring it over. And that's going to be, we're going to go ahead and say I need 12 inches. Or we'll say 11 and a half. Pretty much just like every woman I've ever met, needing 12 inches. Ain't gonna get it from me. So I'm just gonna take my little cutoff tool. I'll cut it a little bit long, no biggie, and we'll just start working it around here. Snug, twist, snug, twist, snug. You get the idea. Just keep snugging and twisting. Yeah, and when you're using one of these little cutoff tools, guys, don't go crazy with it, because the more you snug it all at once, the more of a ridge it's going to leave inside the tubing that you're going to have to ream out. If you just twist a little bit and go around, it's going to leave less of a ridge. So here's something funny for you guys. I actually forgot which one of these was my return and which one was my my fuel feed line. But all I did to figure that out is I blew in the end of this tube and blew in that fitting Could not blow in that fitting, so obviously my pump's behind it. When I blew in this fitting, it was throwing air out the vent. So this is obviously my return, which is going to go into the middle here. So at this point, I need to get my tubing bender, and we're going to put our 3/8 die in it. And we're going to start off by bending it over this way. Come on, silly. Just going to bend it around this way. There we go. Nice bend. No kink. Then we are going to bend it down this way. And you can see we got a nice little bend going there. Follows the tank. So at this point, all I really have to do is line up my bend right here and bring it right into the middle. Then we'll cut off whatever we don't need and put our end on. And I went ahead and screwed my fitting on right there so we can kind of see how long our tube's got to be. It's got to bend and it's got to go in up to about halfway, well, a little more than halfway up the threads here. So I'm going to do that real quick. Tweak where necessary. Okay, we should be good. I actually ended up coming in slightly above it, but that's okay. You know, it's an aluminum line. We can manipulate it a little bit. So what I can do is take, I'll probably tighten the fitting up here and just pull a little more bend in it here. Oh, well, I don't have to tighten the fitting. Because it's not tight, I can go ahead and manipulate it. So we'll pull it down there a little bit, and I'll move it out here a little bit. Yeah, and that should end up putting us right in there. So now all I got to do is, I think before I trim this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run my feed line right next to it. That way I can trim them both off at the same time and kind of figure out where they're going to sit. That way if I have to manipulate, I don't just have to manipulate one. If I don't hit it dead on, I can manipulate both of them a little instead of one of them a lot, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing now is I'm marking where I'm going to cut these off. So the feed line actually needs to be a little longer than the return line. So that's where I'm going to cut them off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take both these lines off. I'm going to cut them off. I'm going to put the compression fitting ends on both of these. Then I will screw them into our filter regulator, stick them back on here, and see what we got. Okay, so there we go, guys. We got both our fuel lines made. Both of our fuel lines are screwed to our fuel pressure regulator / filter. That's pretty much all I can do outside of the car. So the next thing I have to do, I have to actually go drop the old gas tank and put this new gas tank in, and then run the rest of our fuel line. Now this is just basics, guys, so I'm really not planning on doing any of this on camera, but all I'm going to do, I'm going to disconnect this fuel line right here, and this is on the passenger side. I'm going to disconnect this line over here on the driver's side, which I'm assuming is some kind of vent, something like that. And I'm going to take the strap bolts out in the front, driver's side, passenger side. Then I'm going to take the strap bolts out in the rear here on the passenger side and driver's side. I'm going to have a jack under the tank for this procedure, and when I'm finished, I'll just lower the tank down. Then I'll put the new tank on the jack, raise it back up and put the tank strap bolts back in, and we'll start making our fuel lines. And a little FYI, you are better off if you have the tank empty or as close to empty as possible when you do this, for obvious reasons. I got the old fuel tank out. I do want to say it had a lot more fuel in it than I thought it was going to, and everything actually went pretty easy except for the rear bolt, the rear hanger bolt on the passenger side. That sucker was seized up, but you know, some penetrating oil and waiting and messing with it, and I finally got it out. So the old tank is out, the old fuel line is out. You can see it in the floor here. Now, before I actually show you the problem, I want to just go over a couple changes I'm going to make. Right here is the old grounding point. It's actually back here by the rear bumper. Well, because of the way we're doing our harness, I'm going to make a new grounding point probably up here on the frame rail somewhere along there. So that's number one. Number two, the old fuel sending wire right here, it also is back here by the back bumper. I have not figured out where that comes from yet. It may be in the taillight harness, I'm not sure, but obviously I need to relocate that too, because we've got all of our wiring coming out at the front of the tank now. Now, the issue I wanted to tell you about is the factory fuel line is actually in two pieces. There's a second piece about halfway up, and there's a piece of rubber line that connects them. Obviously, I'm wanting to do away with that connection. I'm just wanting one solid piece of line. That honestly would not be that big of a problem, because I should be able to take my old fuel line, lay it on the floor, and just bend the new fuel line to fit, bring it under the car, set it up, and the only extra bends I have to make is where it goes above the frame, right up there before it goes into the engine bay. Well, here's the problem with that plan. We put these subframe connectors on, so I can't just bring the fuel line under and set it up. As a matter of fact, even in two pieces, it was a pain in the ass to get the old one out, because I had to twist it and turn it because of all the bends in the fuel line to get it to go between the bottom of the car. Sorry, I'm breathing hard, guys, but I'm laying on a creeper under the car in a very uncomfortable position at the moment. But it was a pain in the ass to get between the subframe connector and the bottom of the body up there. So at this point, what I'm thinking about doing is making all my bends that have to come up over this frame rail. Like I said, we're going to attach it to all the factory mounting points here, making all those bends and leaving like 8 feet, or not 8 feet, but however many feet we need after the bend that goes under the subframe connector here, leaving that whole part straight, sticking out, and just kind of trying to feed it through there as a straight line, and then set this part up in here, go ahead and bolt it to all the factory mounting spots, and then come back and bend the rest of the line while it's already on the car, which it would make it really difficult for me to use my bender on it. I might have to kind of hand bend it in a lot of spots, but I don't know. It's either that or drop the subframe connector, which is actually a bigger pain in the ass than it sounds, because we've got the cowl tracks, all that, and we actually have, there is a body mount bolt up under, it's like kind of under the rear seat there, that broke off, and Ray actually had to go through and drill out a big hole and do a bunch of mess, and like I think he sealed it when he was done. So I honestly don't think I can get the frame connectors off, even if I wanted to, not without a bunch of drama. So we'll just wait and see. I'm gonna look at it for a while and see what I can figure out. So after thinking about it a little bit, I've decided what I'm gonna do. This is the rear part of the line, and I actually need to leave probably another 8 or 9 inches past that point there, because of the new mounting location on this tank versus the old one. But I've decided what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and pull out my roll of aluminum, and I'm going to mimic all the bends in this back part until it gets to right here. Now once it gets right here, This bend here brings it out of the vehicle, and then it goes under the subframe connector, and then this bend, it goes back and starts going towards the front of the car again. So I'm going to go ahead and do this bend, but I'm not going to do this bend yet. That way I can just leave like a 6-foot piece sticking out, enough to finish the front part. I can leave it just kind of sticking straight out of the car. I'm going to have to move some stuff over there, and I can just fish it through, fish this into place. I'm going to take all my clips here, bend them, take them off here, put them on the new line that's in there, and screw them down to the factory points. Just to show you how I did this, what I did is I started with my first bend, which this is the end by the fuel tank, and I left some extra because, again, I'm not sure how it's going to connect in. But anyway, what I did is I made my first bend, then I duct taped the new line to the old line, came down, made my second bend, then I duct taped, oh sorry guys, got the hiccups. Then I duct taped my new line to my old line again, came down. This was just a slight bend, I kind of hand tweaked it. Then made another bend here, duct taped my line again. Then I came down, made this bend, and these were all close together. And you can see they're not exactly perfect, but they're close enough they should work. Came over, and then this is the bend that shoots the line out the side of the car. So I'm not going to make any more bends past that point yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually straighten this line and try to feed it in from the driver's side of the car, and just let the line kind of feed out through all that mess. I'm going to move some stuff out of the way. Then once I get this up in place, I'm going to go ahead and transfer my little mounting tabs over. Then at that point, once the rear part of the line is mounted up, I will make this bend. I'll lay down here under the car, make this bend, and then I'll worry about all the rest of this line that has to come the rest of the way up the car and into the engine bay. It would be nice if I didn't have to make every single one of these bends, but I'm pretty sure actually I think the only bend I'm going to have to make in order to utilize the factory mounting points is I'm going to have to make that bend right back there, then straight, and then this bend where it kind of comes up and swoops over. That's going to put me in the engine bay. Now the rest of this line used to come up the inner fender there, and it came out like right by the control arm, but we're not doing that anymore. So after this bend, I'm going to have to do something custom here, because I'm going to kind of run it up the firewall a little bit towards the engine. And what I might actually do is not make the rest of the bends, just leave a bunch of extra in the engine bay, so that after we put the engine in, I can decide how I want to route it in the engine bay. All right guys, the fuel line is finished except for where it is going to attach to the filter regulator. But you can see it's going all the way over the wheel well there, comes down, and I used all the factory clips, comes down, bends in right here where it goes underneath, and then goes all the way up along the frame rail, all the way up till it gets to right there. Then it goes up back over the frame and comes up in the engine bay here. You can see I've got it bent to follow the contour of the firewall there. And then right here is our new heater box we installed a couple videos ago. I'm not sure where we're going with it from there. I've got way more than I need here. To be honest, I'm probably going to terminate it right here, like underneath the heater box, and then from there over the back of the engine and into the fuel rail will probably be braided line. But yeah, that's it guys. There's the fuel line. Oh, one thing I want to show you, these clips that are on the factory fuel line, this is a clip that I'm not using because it was a clip that is in the engine bay. But of course, this is a 5/16 line, the factory line. That's the whole reason we ran new fuel lines, is to upgrade to 3/8. But all I did was I took that clip off. I took an extra piece of the aluminum line, and you can see where I was wrapping it around it there. So I was just wrapping the clips around it, taking a pair of pliers and rebending it to fit this line before I put it on the actual line that we were using. There is one clip at the very back, and it actually holds the fuel line right above the bend where it bends and goes to the fuel line that connects to the fuel tank. And just, you know, because our line was a little larger, I couldn't get the whole line up. So you can see I had it in my vice grips here, and the plan was I was just going to oblong the bolt hole a little bit to let it slide over. I mean, it didn't lack much, just a little bit. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of unexpected issues, guys, but you know, that's why I make these videos. So I'm having these unexpected issues, so if you go to do this, you don't have to fucking worry about it. You already know what's coming, right? So next day, it's late at night again, but I'm gonna try to get this done. So I'm back, we're about to throw the tank in. Before I throw the tank in, I just had to show you guys a little something here. Now, we didn't order new insulator strips for the fuel tank or for the straps, but what I did is I used some of this stuff. Yes, once again, I have found another purpose for the acoustical mat. Over the last 2 years, you guys have seen me use this stuff for so many things. Everything from insulating the rear deck in the Camaro so the speakers wouldn't vibrate, to insulating the bottom of the intake manifold in the China Vet. This stuff's just got lots of purposes, but it ought to act as a good insulator to keep the tank straps from rubbing on the bottom of the tank, keep from vibrating, squeaking, and also keep it from rubbing against the braces on the bottom of the car on the top of the tank. So I just cut out some 2-inch wide strips, stuck it on there, top and on the bottom where the tank straps go, and I'm gonna go ahead and shove this in. All right, guys, the fuel tank is in, and you can see all the fuel lines clear, just like we need them to. I guess I'm not going to mount the fuel filter. It's pretty sturdy hanging from these two hard lines. I mean, if I was using soft lines, I would be worried about it, but I'm not. I'm using hard lines, so they pretty much hold it up themselves. And then our outline going up there to the front, you know, that's gonna, once I tie that into it, it's pretty much just gonna be solid. It's not gonna be able to move. So we're good there. We got our plug here. I'm really not gonna cover, you know, I've still got to run the wiring. I'll probably cover that in another video, just wiring the fuel pump or whatever, because I still have the wiring to do on this, guys. But everything fit good. I know it's kind of hard to see, but we've still got this line. I don't know if this was some kind of like vent line that maybe, I don't know if they had charcoal canisters. I don't remember ever using them or ever seeing them in cars this old, but it goes all the way to the engine bay. And you know, I have not run the vent line yet, but I think I've got an idea for that. What I'm probably going to do, because the little vent that it came with, it's supposed to be higher than the fill point. I'm not going to be able to accomplish that leaving it under the car. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run my vent line there across here and probably up into like this empty space in the quarter back here. Wow, there's some rust there. But yeah, I'll probably run it up into there. That's about as high as I can get it. I hope that's going to be high enough. I guess we'll know if fuel leaks out, and we'll just have to try something else, but hopefully that'll be good. But that's what I'm going to do with the vent. You're probably not going to see it in this video because it's already 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to get this done because tomorrow Ray's coming over and we're putting the engine in, so I want this fuel tank thing finished. But anyway, I started taking that extra vent line, and guys, I actually, you know what, give me some feedback, guys, before I take this line all the way out. What I've thought about doing actually is tying the vent line into this old vent or evap line or whatever. What it does is it runs all the way to under the hood, and it comes out like right underneath the power steering box. And I was thinking I could just tie this vent line into that line, and then just put our little check valve vent thing in the engine bay right underneath the steering box where this line comes out. So you guys who've stuck around and watched the video this long, let me know what you think about that. I'm not going to touch that line for a couple days. I'm not going to touch that vent line for a couple days. So if you think I should just tie this to this old return line or whatever the hell it is and put our vent in the engine bay, let me know. Taking suggestions. Actually, I don't think that'd be a bad idea. But anyway, the only thing I have left to do here is tie our feed line here into the end here. So basically all I've got to do, it's pretty much lined up, guys. I mean, it comes down the fender just like the original line did. I've got a bend in it just like the original line, and the original line used to tie into a fuel line here, if you remember from the beginning of the video. So pretty much at this point, all I've got to do is make a bend right here and put my compression fitting on, and we're done. One more thing I wanted to show you guys. If you remember, this was the bracket that went on our original fuel line, and I couldn't get it to fit the new fuel line. Remember, I talked about oblonging this hole, so I was just going to leave it off, but turns out there was a bracket just like this on the other side for that vent line that I'm talking about, but that vent line is actually a 3/8 line. So the other bracket, the hole was spaced over a little bit, so what I was able to do is take the bracket like this off the driver's side, move it over to the passenger side, and secure our new line with it. But I want to say something right now, guys. It's really not an option for me because that line's, you know, kind of in rough shape, but I'm almost thinking what I could have done possibly is use that 3/8 vent line on the driver's side as my fuel line, and because it's got no rubber in it except for where it attached to the tank, which we would have redone that. But I don't know, guys. I mean, I like having new fuel line in it, but I'm almost thinking we could have done that, and that would have actually brought the fuel line up on the driver's side. We would have had to do some funny shit under the power steering pump where that line comes out. But I don't know, man. That might be an option that you guys that are doing this, that might be something you want to think about. We're all hooked up. Everything's nice and clean. That's it, guys. I mean, that's our whole fuel system right there. We got the tank. We've run our lines. I've still got to figure out the vent thing. I'm going to wait and get some feedback from you guys. Maybe some of you guys have actually done what I'm talking about. Anyway, guys, that's the fuel system video. We're all done. We got our tank in. Fuel lines are run. We're good to go there. Hopefully, if you guys are looking at doing an LS swap in your Nova, you know, hopefully these videos are helping you guys out, kind of showing you what to look for. There's more than one way to skin a cat, guys. I'm just showing you one of several, you know, ways you could go about doing this. I mean, you could run external pumps. There's a dozen different ways you can build a fuel system for your LS swap. But this is the way I'm doing it, so this is the way I'm showing you. The next video you're gonna see on the LS Nova is gonna be this guy going in. Ray's actually coming over tomorrow. We're gonna bolt the engine to the transmission, put our LSX Innovation swap plates on for the motor mounts, and drop this bad boy in here. So stay tuned for that video. If you guys are subscribed, thank you very much. If you're not, think about subscribing if you want to follow this or any of the other builds. Thanks again for watching. Now get out in the garage, get something done, and I'll see you next time here on Bad Luck Garage.